I can't. Considering this. Okay, done. All right. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Um, how did you get into writing? What were you before you were a writer?
My pen name, one of my my main pen name is Yve Vale,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
I also have Raven Vale.
Right.
And I am just starting another pen name with my husband, Mr. Vale. Um, and with it's gonna be Jade Vale. And then
Hmm.
anyway, and his is gonna be Aaron Vale. So
The whole Vale
and
family.
so that Vale romances. So I figured we might as well brand it, right?
Hmm.
And um I write primarily reverse harem,
Hmm.
paranormal, and with Raven, I do just MF
Hmm.
paranormal. And then Jade's going to be our adventure into uh, contemporary. So we're
Wonderful.
gonna
Okay.
try that out, see how
Hmm.
that goes. And I like to challenge myself, so that's part of it. So
Hmm.
mm, what I did before, um, was mostly into like retail, so I did a lot of retail stuff. So I got
Okay.
to interact
Hmm.
with a lot of people, um, good and bad. But one day I I was just really just I mean, I've always wanted to write. I've always written
Hmm.
little stories. I've also, when I was going through college and through high school, I was in, the creative writing classes and wrote poetry. And
Hmm.
I always wanted to write a novel, but that's a lot to start a novel. So
Yes.
I had a friend of mine in town who said that they took this workshop where they wrote a book in a week. And I was like, okay. And it was like, stream of consciousness kind of thing.
Okay.
And I she's like, oh, we're having a party. You should come. And I'm like, why would she invite me to this private party for this group? But I was like, okay, I'll go.
Hmm.
And I went, and I was inspired by just the concept of just sitting down and doing it.
Yeah,
I thought, well, if they
absolutely.
can do one in a week, I mean, but they wrote a lot of words, then maybe I
Hmm.
could write a book in 2 months. And so I sat down that night and I wrote my first chapter. And then in 2 months, I had a book. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And
And
then
how long ago was that? How long have you
that
been?
was way back in '09. So,
Oh, nine. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you've
yeah,
been doing this a long time. Yeah, like 15
yeah.
years. Darn.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
worked with it. It was rough, and I just
Hmm.
kept editing and editing, and I wrote a trilogy under another pen name that I kind of abandoned, but
Hmm.
um that's the way of the world. And
Yeah.
a lot of authors. I didn't know what I was doing with marketing or anything, so um
Hmm.
but I have all those books that I wrote under that pen name, and then I really got into reverse harem reading it.
Hmm.
And I decided to give it a shot and got got into the academy
Hmm.
group promotion that I was in, and we were able to launch our books together, and that was really a lot of fun. I learned so much. I got to
Hmm.
network with people. I got to interact with fans, get to know what they liked. It was really great. I finally kind of came out of my author shell, and was
Hmm.
able to interact
Yeah.
as an author. And yeah, so I've been doing that. So I think I'm close to I think I'm around 27 books that I've written.
Wow.
Uh,
Crazy.
a couple of them are novellas, but yeah.
Yeah. Still books. We're not going to stop counting novellas, not anytime soon. That takes me from like three to five.
Yeah, I mean, and I just love it. I love
Hmm.
falling into those worlds and getting lost there.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so I found you, I think I found you probably through Mary.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't remember what of yours I read. I was trying to remember because I did read something of yours before I started reading Bewitching Her Monsters. But I can't. And then afterwards, I read a bunch of your stuff, and now it's all disorganized in my brain.
It was probably my Shadowcraft Academy. I know
It
that
might
Mary,
have been. Yeah,
I,
I think it
I
might
think
have
she
been. That was
read
about the
that
same
for,
time. Yeah,
yeah, I think she read that and she was,
into it. Yeah.
yeah, she was into it. So,
Hmm.
and, and yeah, so I think she was telling a few people that to read it, and that was great.
Yeah, that
That's
sounds
actually how I got to,
very, very
that's how
likely.
I got to meet her anyway. So was
Hmm.
through giving away a sample of my book, and she read it, and then we became friends.
Wow. Whoops. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to see if, yeah, we have people in here.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Gee. How about if things worked? Okay. Well, what I was going to say is that Bewitching Your Monsters really, it gave me a very self-insert fantasy sort of vehicle because, it's about a paranormal romance writer who's in her
Yeah.
40s. I wish. uh, now you have to write the one about the paranormal romance writer in her 50s. That would be perfect for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I can do that. I had a
um,
lot of fun with that, the playing with that. And
mhm.
also like,
It
I
was.
mean, I'm 50, so
Mhm.
I'm I'm also silly and fun and still, and you don't have to
Yeah.
be in
Yeah.
anything. You just have life experience and you realize things sometimes are not as serious as they, need to be, and
Yeah.
so I liked playing with a character that was really close to myself, like really
For
close.
sure. Yeah. 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 I mean, that's good. I mean, I kind of got the sense of it just from the little bits and back and forth that you and I have had over the years. Um,
Mhm.
I could definitely pick up on it. And I started hearing Mare as Mary, like as soon as the comment about the wine bottle
Oh yeah.
sized. Yeah. I was like, okay, well, from now on, that's who that is in my head.
And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because we would have our little jokes
Hmm.
and yeah, back and forth in the Facebook chats, and we would joke about those different things. So it felt really natural just to include what I have
Yeah.
in my daily life.
Yeah, so we have Mary and Elizabeth and Rebecca. Hello, Miss Becca Dixon. Looks like Stephanie is here too. Thank you for coming, guys. All right, so a lot of fun in. I mean, I think Bewitching Your Monsters is just kind of a fun book. I mean, it is, um, and I really, really liked that nothing was too easy. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the entire way. And I really love it when it's not that the people are being super, I don't know, super obstinate, super stubborn, but rather that there are like out, these other things around them that are, so you don't have people acting super dumb. They're doing the
Yeah.
best they can considering the circumstances. I much prefer that to, I don't know, like a sort of flat space with really stubborn people giving each other a hard time. So that's something that,
Yeah.
yeah, that I've enjoyed about, particularly about this series without going into the last two books, which I'm not going to do today. We're going to be spoiling only the first book, not the last two. um, so yeah, what would you say has been your most popular series in terms of hitting with fans, doing real well? What do you think your best series has been?
Well, I mean, before now, it was definitely Shadowcraft Academy. But
Did real
I,
well,
I
yeah.
did, yeah, I did great with that. I had a
Hmm.
lot of fans resonate with Shayla. I like to think that my characters
Hmm.
are smart, and all of them are, not just like just the FMC.
Hmm.
But
Right.
I like them to be smart, and I like them to be strong-willed, but not to the point of them doing something that like is convenient for the plot. Sometimes we're like, I'm gonna be a brat and run off, and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
that they can run off and get caught. Um,
Yeah.
and there's times when that is a thing, and I'm not saying that that is not a plot device that does work, at times, but just for that, I don't really like to do
Yeah.
that. I like the things that kind of happen to them.
Yeah. Hmm.
Maybe they don't make the best decisions, but
Hmm.
it's not just for being obstinate. Um, Although I'm probably more obstinate in my real life.
If every character made all the right decisions, we would have no books. There would be no
Yeah,
story,
exactly.
so I know
Exactly.
that I know fans can get really frustrated when they can see the long
Yeah.
road ahead and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
FMC is missing it. They can get very, very frustrated to see them making, erroneous things. Or maybe your FMC is young. I'm writing
Yeah.
about a 16-year-old right now, and she does dumb shit, and
Yeah.
so did I at that
And people
age.
can do that no matter how old they
Yeah,
are. So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
But
and it's
you do. I think young people have an especially a big, big buffer of like, let's just be okay with them overreacting. Let's be okay with them
yeah,
falling in love too easily. Let's be okay with them getting freaked out by sex. That stuff is a lot more acceptable in a younger person than your 30-year-old, average
exactly.
FMC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I like to have them try to make smart decisions.
Mhm.
And whether they are smart or not, they don't well,
Right.
we know as the audience all the information. So, or most of
Mhm.
the information. So we get a special view, like you said, as a
Yeah.
reader or author about what no, 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 don't go down that door. That's the bad door. You know,
Yeah.
but yeah, I really like writing characters that are kind, that are trying to do the best they can. Um and like with Jade, when you were saying that everything wasn't easy, I think you said.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah,
was.
she has magic. She finds that she has magic, and it's not like, ooh, I'm Superwoman now and I can do
Yeah.
everything.
Mm-mm.
And I like that fact that to me
Mhm.
it was, I liked basing my paranormal in reality, that if we did just find we just came into a special
Mhm.
power, we wouldn't know
Right.
how to use it immediately.
No,
Um,
no,
I
yeah.
like playing with that some things might come naturally to you and some things might not. And it might be wonky where you could use it, at one point, and then your nerves,
Right, right, right. I know. And people, when you're reading, you like those absolute rules, like especially with magic stuff, you want to be like, this works this way every single time because that's how I'm going to understand it from now on. And in reality, nothing works that way. Nothing.
no, no.
Absolutely. You could have somebody who can't do something one day and can the next. But yeah, that's not all that acceptable in the paranormal romance world.
No, and but I did play with that concept, and since she was a paranormal author,
Yeah.
she was
Hmm.
making fun of that fact that she couldn't, and she was laughing
Yeah.
at herself at times when things were happening.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I like that, and that, I mean, that's technically a spoiler because it's
Shh. We know that she gets some powers back.
yes, we do know that she's a witch, but at one
Right.
point she starts playing with that concept, and
Hmm.
it doesn't come naturally. It doesn't, although sometimes it does. Um, and but like I said, sometimes you're able
Well, I think
to,
I think her dream walking sort of ability, I don't really know what to call it there. I think
yeah,
that is something that's sort of she's got like at kind of at the core of her, and it doesn't really need to be awakened in the same way that everything else does. Um,
that
yeah.
definitely is natural, and that it's something that she had since she was very young. So that's something that
Yeah.
she's
Mhm.
working with, whether she realized she was working with her magic or not. It's something that she has been working with.
I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that aspect of it. The way that she has been using magic all along and just not realizing it because it makes you wonder about everything, like, who knows
Yeah.
what's going on
Yeah.
there that we're just pretending is. But she's talking to her familiar, her guinea pig, and and doesn't realize that she has that animal affinity. She just thinks, I'm good with animals.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I do like playing with, like I said, I like basing my stuff in kind of a what would I really do in this situation
Mhm.
as in this reality that we know. And yeah, I would probably still I talk to plants. I personally do. So and then science is
And they
proving that
talk back.
yeah, that they actually make sounds and they do
Mhm.
acknowledge when people are around. They even know what color shirt you're wearing apparently, or you're standing near them.
Right. Mhm.
So it's kind the world is more magical than we realize, and I like playing with that concept.
Yeah. All right. I'm just trying to get the newest comments to come up here to make sure we don't have any questions brewing. Let's see.
But I did love playing up the tropes,
Mhm.
especially the steamy romance thing and uh author like and just her little insides um
Mhm.
where she when just like me, I'll have something happen in my life and I'm like, huh, and I'll daydream for a few minutes. David's like, are you what are you doing over there?
Well, the way that you describe the writing process through bewitching her monsters is really interesting to me. In the sense, I had a couple of moments of being like, no one, like the way that it was like the the sitting down to write and losing all track of time, forgetting to eat. Um, it's like any creative endeavor, it can pull you into that space for sure.
Mhm.
But I don't know that everyone also gets how writer's block is and how frustrating it is. And it was really interesting watching, her watching Jade go through, the fits and starts and looking for a muse and, you know, yeah.
Yeah, because I think at some point we all get a I mean, not maybe not everybody, but most people
Mhm.
probably get stuck, at some point.
I don't
I
think
fortunate
Grace McGinty ever does. I really, I'm not sure CM Stunich has ever been stuck on a book. Sam
no, no,
Hall could write a new book every single month and does.
I
I'm
mean,
just
for
teasing. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
yeah, but they they're very prolific, and I don't
Yeah. Some
fortunately,
people are.
I fortunately, I don't feel like I'm stuck for very long. I one thing I do have going for me is that, my husband is my sounding board, so he's usually there most of the time where, I'm uh able to like if I'm stuck on an idea or I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm here now and I read everything up to the point that I'm at usually
Right.
and I'm like, okay, I don't know where to go from here. And then we start brainstorming. And that's one of the reasons why he started writing was that we brainstorm
Mhm.
like it's magic. Like I'm really excited about that part where we're able to bounce ideas after off of each other and come up with an entire book plot within, a day. And I mean not detailed, but like pretty close. But
Yeah.
uh
Okay.
but I
But this is
really
actually a really good segue spot, actually, because I was going to ask you, I've been asking everyone, are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? And you're sitting here talking about it. So can you expand on that? How do you approach writing a book? Sounds collaborative. How much of the plot are you putting down? And are you writing to the end that you know is going to happen, or do you have every scene?
I do not have every scene.
Okay.
Typically what happens is I I dream up or imagine an inciting incident. So like what is the trigger to the whole entire story? So
Mm-hmm.
like with with Jade, it wasn't necessarily the bar, but that she's inviting a wolf into her house that she thinks is a stray dog. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the trigger that pretty much like spawned the whole entire thing. I'm like, okay, but this is a reverse harem. Who else do we have? And then I started brainstorming the other characters and what their relationships were going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of start off with the interaction, the first interaction, and then I think about how they're going, how my FMC is going to meet, how they're going to meet all the guys. Now that might shift
Mhm.
and change as I start to write. And then I really think about their characters, their belief systems. So like, do they believe the world's against them? Do they believe
Mhm.
everything is going for them? You know, whatever it is, I want to know what they believe in, because that's gonna, and what their motivations are, because that to me informs the plot. So,
Okay. Mhm. Do
so
you
that's
keep
how
a
I,
character sheet? How do you
yes.
keep everything? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you have
in
like
my document, I keep a sheet going of everything,
Mhm.
and like, so I can keep it clear. This person has brown hair and blue eyes, and any other
Oh yeah.
traits. Like,
Mhm.
do they have a smell? Do they have,
Mhm.
all the different things? And also, like, what is the resistance to a relationship, and what is compelling them toward one? So that way I can also see that the FMC is going to trigger, and they're going to trigger each other in certain ways, and how they're going to heal
Mhm.
each other. So I like
Right.
to think about a lot of, I'm very character driven, I think. Although, and then what happens, I usually write about 5 to 10,000 words. And then I fill out my plot sheet, which is really just like the major points of the story. Like,
Mhm.
okay, at the
Okay.
climax, this will happen. And at the turnaround, this will happen. At the loss, uh,
Mhm.
what kind of losses are they going to have? What is the climax? And I typically know where I'm going to end. So I kind of feel like I have a loose idea, like, okay, I'm in California and I need to get to New York, and
Mhm.
I can go this route or this route, and I'm like, okay, I'm choosing to go this route, but I might jog up and down here and then to see some of the sights. So,
Okay.
but I usually know I'm going to New York, and so that way I know where I'm going, where I'm headed, and it gives me some sense of like purpose for each of the scenes. And I write
Mhm.
pretty linear. I don't usually write any scenes out of order, um,
Yep.
because for my brain, that's not how it works.
Mhm.
It likes to,
How about two projects at once? Can you do that?
I have done it. I don't like doing it anymore. I like seeing that one through. I might go back and edit something, but I don't like,
While you're
uh,
writing, yeah. Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, I like something to be put to bed. And I used to jump around between series with my other
Mhm.
pen name, and I, I don't want to do that again. Want to get the
Okay.
series done so that I don't have to like remember everything. Although I have a pretty good sense of story, and what happened where, but there's nuances there that I don't want to miss.
No, you end up having to read everything again that you've already written to try to catch yourself back up.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah.
and some people are
Yeah.
able to do that, like, and more power to them. My brain
Yeah.
doesn't want to do that. It wants to stick with those characters and see them through.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now and I don't do not recommend.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean I'll get through it, but
yeah,
it's not my favorite. No, not by any means. It doesn't leave me feeling, innervate. It doesn't give me any, like some people like to do this because they feel like they get a little kick of endorphins every time they go to the new project.
yeah.
I'm not getting that.
I get the kick when I finish the next scene. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, for me, and like I'm able to see where I want to go next typically. I mean, there's times where I'm like at a crossroads, and
Hmm.
especially book 3, and when I'm finishing a series, that is the hardest book to write. Because it's no longer exploratory per se. It's more of like, okay, I want to wrap up every single thing for my readers. I want
Yeah.
to like tie up all the loose ends that I can, and give them a satisfying ending. So there's a lot of pressure on the last book.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm finding that to be true. Yeah. Um, so let's not talk about the things that make me feel bad. Let's talk, let's talk about the things that what are the things that you really love about writing? What are the delightful moments? We were talking about what gives you a little endorphin kick. That's nice. But what are some of the other things that you really go like, damn, this is a good job?
I think I like it. Well, I love when the characters finally come together and finally resolve their stuff.
Mhm.
The major resolve where they can start moving forward in their relationship.
Okay.
Um, you know, that always I love that part of it. And I also I I find yeah, I find I really just love progressing that story and also getting
Mhm.
to points that I had envisioned in the very beginning. Like I said, I leave
Yeah.
little,
Mhm.
treats in a sense for
Yeah.
myself that like, if I have, there was a scene, that I came to me right in the beginning of writing Bewitching Monsters is when Jade and Flint, or Gargoyle,
Mhm.
get together finally, and
Mhm.
I wanted to get there, but it was in book 2, so it
Mhm.
gives me, like, okay, it's like the point on the mountain that I have to get to, and I'm like, "Okay," and it gives me
Yeah. Mhm.
energy, it gives me, motivation to get to those special scenes that I've been
Mhm.
envisioning and wanting to get to, but I don't allow myself to write, so that I'm kind of forced to get myself there. Uh,
Right, right. Because you don't write out of order. I do the same thing. Yeah.
yeah,
I had
and
the idea about the ball that you finally get in Dreaming Death. Like I had been thinking about a ball in the Irish vampire castle for like 2 books, you know. And finally was like, all right, I get my ball.
right, and for me, that's the treat. It's finally to
Yeah.
getting to and writing those scenes and seeing them come to life.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because once I get there, they're always a little different than I have first imagined them,
Yeah,
you know?
and you can't write most of this stuff ahead of time for that very reason. You just don't know who's going to be mad at who and what they're all going to be thinking about at that moment until you get there. So yeah. Yeah.
So I do leave myself notes,
Hmm.
like, "This will happen," like, if it's
Hmm.
important.
Right.
And even sometimes it doesn't actually come to fruition, because my characters naturally, like you said, they change, they grow, they
Hmm.
have
Yeah.
different things that happen to them in between the time I thought of the book until I got to whatever part of the series that I'm in.
Hmm.
So, it's gonna shift a lot of their dialogue, it's gonna shift a lot of how they react to each other, nuances in how they, move and act, and so I found I did try to do that once with, Shadowcraft, writing one of the scenes out of order that
Hmm.
was gonna happen in book 2, and it completely changed. There's, like, 1 or 2 things that I was able to use out of the entire, like, scene that I had envisioned, and for me, I felt
I've
that much better when I got to it, so I
yeah.
realized I can't do that again.
Yeah, I wrote a spanking scene in Cheating Death that went on for like 4,000 words. It was a ridiculous. I think I had just read some LV Lane and I was in a spanking kind of mood. And I
Love
was
scene?
all like, yes.
Yeah, yeah, I have to be careful reading certain people before I write stuff because I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like wanting to write certain stuff and I'm like, "Oh,
It
wait a
was my
minute,
first,
that's
I had it was my first book. I had no idea how anything was going to affect me. And so I wrote this like 4,000 word spanking scene and it was totally out of control. And we ended up cutting it because it made no sense. Wherever I stuck it, it just didn't work. And now it just kind of lives off on its own. It's like a little parallel timeline of what would have happened if.
well, you can release it as a little fun bonus."
Mhm. True, very true, very true. I should
So
do
this
that.
is a what if moment.
It's like I was joking and I was writing my own fan fiction like ahead of time. Right.
Actually, that's kind of what I wanna do now, with Jade. I don't wanna give her up, and, my husband and I were talking about it, and we
Mhm.
may actually start writing these little scenes and just, like,
Mhm.
all the little
Oh,
bonus
I think
from her
I'm
bucket
a hundred
list.
for I'm 100% like I am so cool with that. Um, I remember when Alex Liddell finished Power of Five, and then she put out those novellas about the Great Falls Military Academy or something like that. she put
Yeah, the
out like
alternate.
4
Yeah.
of them, and they were an alternate reality. I mean, she did manage to tie it in, but let's be honest, it was just like, what would have happened if everyone forgot each other?
Yeah.
It was an
I mean,
amnesia
yeah, she
fanfic.
made it work. She made it work. But
It
yeah,
was
it did.
so good. It was just so good. And I desperately want to do that at some point. So yes, please make that something that we do now.
Well, like I said, we're seriously talking
Mhm,
about it. The dust has to settle that I know because I just released the
mhm.
last book of the series, but I do want to do that. Because it would be fun just to write these little fun scenes that.
Yes, 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 yes. I'm fascinated by the what if scenarios. I'm fascinated by if you turn left then instead of right, what would have happened? And I would love to do things like with my own stuff, like Thomas never left the wolf pack in Alaska, but he has to find his way back to them anyway. Or, like stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be really like in early in the in the story, and how would it affect it? I think that'd be fun.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and for me, I mean, I usually like to have my
Hmm.
spice make sense to the plot.
Yeah.
As much
Hmm.
as possible, and not just have a scene to have a scene. But
Hmm.
there was so many scenes that I really wanted to write with them because she would want to act out her.
Of course. Yeah. 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 Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so I did write a little bonus novella for anybody who
Hmm.
read all 3 books. And but it's just three scenes of like some spice. And I was like, I have so
Hmm.
many more that I want to try out. So
Yes. Hmm.
we already have a list going of all the scenes we want to do.
I think that's great. I mean, I absolutely do. Okay, that's cool. All right, so let's ask you another question. Um,
Mm.
okay, we've covered so much of this that I have to just take a quick look through it. Okay. Um, so what are your plans? What are the next stories that you're working on?
Well, uh my husband and I are writing a spin-off of Shadowcraft
Hmm.
Academy. So it's not there will be it's in the universe. So it's not necessarily the same characters, although there's going to be cameos, but
Hmm.
it has a new thread, and it's the underlying thread that happens in the entire universe. Shadowcraft, bewitching,
Hmm.
and that that sh- they there was a loss of magic, and so we're going to
Yeah.
go like
Hmm.
on that, and but it's really been fun to co-author something with my husband, and
That's so cool. Yeah.
yeah, it's been
Hmm.
great. And so we're gonna do a trilogy with that.
Hmm.
And then we are, like I said, we're going to start a new pen name and
Hmm.
dip our toe
And do some
into dark
contemporary.
literature.
Yeah. Very
And
exciting. So, do you have any trouble? I guess you don't. Or I guess I'm not asking if you have trouble, but did you find it difficult to move from what I would call a kind of humorous um, inner voice to your FMCs? I mean, there's a lot of funny parts. I find myself laughing when I read your books.
oh,
How are
good.
you going to go to dark contemporary where that's just not as cool? Yeah.
Well, um, it's gonna be there's still gonna be a little humor in there. I mean,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
I think it's gonna be dark world, not so much dark romance between
Mhm.
the main
So the
characters.
darkness will be around more than.
Around them more.
Okay.
Although, they're gonna be bad boys.
Of
Um,
course.
they're an organized crime, but I still my husband and I are like all we do every day is pretty much joke around.
Mhm.
Um, so we're gonna use some of that humor and put that in
Mhm.
there.
Okay.
We do have a novella that's coming out with an anthology, and there is a lot of humor in there. Even though there's a lot of darkness,
Mhm.
and it still has like jokes and
Mhm.
humor. Because
Right.
I feel like it kind of gives, for me at least,
Mhm.
it kind of lets the valve off of some of the pressure. If you
Yeah. Mhm.
laugh a little
Yeah.
bit, kind of do, you know, after everything's like blown up and then somebody makes a joke. I mean, you
Mhm,
see, I mean, I've read dark romance and that happens.
mhm. Yes, yeah. And I guess it really isn't fair for me to paint dark romance as being humorless. That's not really what I meant exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be as fun
Yeah.
as Jade, but Jade is pretty much her own entity.
Can you
And the
imagine
jokes that I
Jade
have in
being
there,
dropped
yeah.
into a dark romance?
Well, I mean, there's dark themes in Bewitching Her Monsters. So,
Yeah, that's true. But
I mean, there's torture and murder and death.
all
But
right, you're right.
she's like, haha.
Yeah, I made an attempt at writing dark romance when I was writing my Halos and Horns for that anthology that I did. There we go. Masked Desires is what it says. And I actually got the one with the typo on it that says Omergaverse.
Now I want to write that.
Omergaverse. I had to talk RK Pierce into sending it to me because she was just, you know, she changed it as soon as she saw it. I was like, no, please send me one of those. Okay. But I did try to start that out as more of a dark romance thing, and I found that my voice just doesn't really do that. It's all snarky and strange and weird in her head, and I can't. And I also seem to have trouble making people do bad things to each other, like real bad things.
Between the main
Also,
characters or
yeah,
outside of
yeah.
that?
Like I can have outside people do terrible things. I mean, I've
Oh, yeah, yeah,
tortured
yeah.
people, I've killed people, but
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, the heroes, I have, yeah, being like super bullying, it's very hard for me. Yeah.
I don't write that.
Mhm.
And that, and we'll see how our pending does
Right.
because we don't have that. I think if I warn people and let them
Right.
know it's dark world, not dark romance per se.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't like it. I don't really like writing it. I don't read that much of it. That really heavy bullying,
Mhm.
and my husband is definitely not. He. It was really funny when I started writing Academy. I had my
Mhm.
vampire that he killed people, and my husband was like, "Oh, but are they gonna like him? He murders people." And I'm like,
Oh, they'll still like him, honey.
I said, "They'll love him.
They'll
It'll
still
be
like
okay.
him.
It'll be
It'll
okay."
be all right.
He's like, "Oh, okay, okay, okay." Now he gets it.
Yeah.
But at first he
Yeah.
was like, because I didn't have my heroes killing people before that.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was a little shocked that that they may be morally gray, and that's perfectly fine.
I really respect people who can just sort of turn and do a different genre, a different voice, a different style. I think that's so interesting. So yeah, I'll be watching that. That sounds good. I think I could do sci-fi. I'm not sure I could do like a reasonable contemporary.
I feel like every book kind of takes like its own personality, and I
Mhm.
just kind of
Yeah.
run with that. I feel like every single one of my series has its own identity. Like maybe some
Mhm.
people might not realize it's the same person right off. Although I do have
Mhm.
certain consistent concepts. Like I said, I don't really write the guy's
Mhm.
horrible to her and then it being
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let's talk about tropes for just a minute because we're just kind of talking about bullying. So I think this is always super interesting is there a trope that you don't enjoy reading? Is there a trope that you don't think you would write? I'm not asking you to, you know, to ick on anything, but I'm just
yeah,
curious, like, yeah, like I really love some tropes, but I probably wouldn't write them because I don't think I do them well. But and
I
I
mean, I
don't know of
love.
any that I wouldn't read, but
I mean, I think I would read almost anything.
Mhm.
Whether I how much I enjoy it is another thing.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, so the whole pregnancy
Mhm.
trope.
Not all that interesting to you.
I mean, although I've read plenty that have,
Mhm.
that in
Yeah.
it, it just doesn't necessarily do anything extra for me. It's just
Okay.
love.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, she got pregnant.
Mhm.
Um, although I have had it in my my epilogue a few
Hmm.
times I've had where there's
Children
pregnant
at
like
the end.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, but usually it's kind of like glossed over where um
Hmm.
they're not the whole, it's not about the pregnancy, it's more about them like carrying on
Yeah.
and having kids. But yeah, the pregnancy thing never really resonates with me. I think heavy bullying
Hmm.
doesn't really do much for me. Again, I mean, I still can enjoy the writing, I can still enjoy
Hmm.
like the plot, but it
What
doesn't,
about
I don't gravitate toward it, and I don't
mhm.
gravitate it in my writing either. So,
What about like a rejected mate sort of plot line or like a good grovel?
oh, I love a good grovel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did do that in my Shadowcraft Academy. My dragon shifter
Hmm.
rejects her,
Yep.
and I had a lot of fun playing with that concept where he didn't really want to reject her.
Want
It's
to. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so he's conflicted. So that was fun to write. And then when he finally like snaps out of it, I did love
Hmm.
writing the grovel aspect of it. And I do like when
I like
I like reading that too.
I really, really like a good grovel. And I rarely find ones that I find like um are emotionally deep enough for me. I don't mean that they need to be crawling on their knees for X amount of pages, but I need to feel the pain that they're feeling is in proportion to what the FMC went through, or I just am not satisfied with it. And it's a fine balance, you know.
Yeah, because you don't want to go too overboard, and you don't want to
Hmm.
do too little. And then I also feel like it can't just be "I'm sorry," because
No.
that's just
Mm-mm.
the words. I want to
Hmm.
see some action. I want to see them thinking about how they're going to change their behavior to become better. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do.
I saw,
I love the
yeah.
rejected mates. I'll definitely read that. I don't know how many more I'll do of those, but I do like
Mhm.
a good novel, even if it's not about rejected, it's just they screwed up somehow.
I thought maybe bewitching her monsters was going there in the very beginning. Not so much with the rejected mate. Well, yeah, a little bit. I was wondering if Flint was gonna kind of figure himself out. If, you know, I was wondering how far we were gonna go before everyone was like, okay, yeah, we all love her.
Yeah, and I toyed with that up to the very end.
Mhm.
Just spoiler alert. Like
Mhm.
some are all in, some are not all in. And
Mhm.
so I did like playing with that concept, and then also maybe being close to all in
Mhm.
and then realize maybe something pulling them back. So
Right. So do you prefer a slow build harem over a quick um some Omega verse have everybody kind of falling in love at once, for instance. Um, you know,
yeah, I mean I don't mind instant attraction and
yeah.
the whole concept of fate and mates, you have that. And I
Hmm.
like playing with that, but I also like them still developing their actual relationships and
Yeah.
figuring themselves
Hmm.
out and figuring how to work together. So I do like a slower, like usually my book ones are a little bit of a slower burn.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Well, they have
and
to be, I feel like, you know.
yeah, well, there's some people and I,
Yeah.
you know, they it's right out of the chute. They're doing stuff, and that's cool.
Hmm.
I have no problem with that. But for me, I like building up, and for me, it I when everybody's all good in the very beginning, it
Hmm.
kind of I'm like, "Oh, well,
You kind of lose interest. Yeah. It's
yeah,
okay. You can say it.
I want some challenge. I want to know. I mean,
Yeah.
but I've read it and I've seen it done really well. But like for me, I
Hmm.
like to write that there's challenges in the relationship, that there's something holding them back or for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
um, so I do like a slower burn. I like a slower build. Usually I one person's in by book one, and
Yeah.
if not,
Hmm.
and then we build.
Yes. Yeah. I lose a lot of interest in finishing series where everyone gets together and there's another whole book. I struggle. Unless there's a whole lot of outside like action happening that will continue to kind of push it along. Yeah, the minute everyone's like on board, my brain just kind of goes, well, what's next? Because
Yeah, and
it's, yeah.
as an author, it's for me, it's like that too.
Yeah, if you start them, if you get everyone together too fast, it becomes, yeah, kind of boring to write. Yeah.
Although it would be an interesting, I would probably have to only do it as a standalone, but
Hmm.
it would be an interesting challenge, and I've contemplated it,
Hmm.
writing an all in from the beginning type of thing. But at least for the guys, and then just see
Yeah.
what happens. But because that would be a challenge for me because I have never
Well,
written.
I think I've read some pretty good Omega verse that I would call on the sweet verse side, where there
Mm,
isn't a lot of drama or angst. They probably would go along with that. I
yeah,
read one, and I'm trying to remember the name of it right now, but the only real conflict in the entire book was that she was really nervous and had a lot of anxiety.
yeah.
That was it. And somehow I read the whole thing. It was really good. you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
emotionally intelligent. It was fun to watch everybody trying to figure out how to make things better for her. She learned to stand up for herself. It was enough.
yeah, and
And
sometimes those are great books to read when you already have enough going on.
yeah, right, right. It was like taking a bath, right? It's just,
Yeah, I need a
oh,
break. Yeah, I typically read a lot more high intensity stuff.
yeah, I do too.
And
Me too.
yeah.
Hmm.
And another challenge that I've joked around with Elizabeth Deer is that
Hmm.
she writes these families that
Oh,
the
yeah. Hmm.
FMC is like a really positive family.
Hmm.
And I love that. I love reading those
Yeah.
books. I don't know if I could write that though. And so that's, I usually have
Hmm.
my FMC so traumatized. And that's
Hmm.
part of her trying to like trust
Right.
people. So it'd be interesting to challenge myself and have the FMC have a
A really
positive
good family.
background,
Uh-huh.
and not, and then it wasn't trauma, and and they, maybe they're still around, and maybe they're nice, and I, yeah,
Yeah, what would that be like?
I don't know. I mean, I would have to really use my imagination.
And now I want to and if Elizabeth is still there, now I want to challenge her to do the opposite. Can you write us a story about an FMC who comes out of an abusive place without a really great big brother of some kind?
Yeah, I know. If it's a challenge,
Mhm.
it is a challenge, and I really
Yeah,
respect that
yeah.
she's able to do that, because if you have a
Hmm.
supportive background and you have, you know,
Hmm.
things that, and
Yeah,
she
you
usually has it.
still, yeah.
Yeah, she usually has it where there's some other conflict that they have to resolve, and the
Hmm.
challenge would definitely be to get something uh that's strong enough to hold an
Hmm.
entire series or a book.
Yeah. Yeah. I had Elizabeth Deer on here a couple weeks back, and I was telling her, and I'll repeat it, that the way that she manages to have these extremely strong female main characters who are also really vulnerable is really just a masterful thing.
Yeah,
They don't come off as being full of themselves. They don't come off as assholes. They don't come off as blessed and, one of God's favorites or any of that stuff. They come off as being vulnerable and, having all the same flaws everyone does. They're just also have these strengths.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I really like that. I struggled that when I was writing Sunday. I was trying to decide what kind of family she was going to come out of, and I really wanted her to have a father and not have that be the thing that makes every woman, act out, act crazy, have a hard time. I
yeah,
wanted to give her a father who would be um, admirable in a lot of ways, a good guy, but had fucked
yeah,
up. And so that's how I
yeah.
decided to write it. Yeah.
I think you did a great job with that.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I did that back and forth of do we make it this or do we make it that, or is there some hybrid that we could come up with where everybody's happy?
Yeah, I like that he just felt like a guy
Yeah,
who was trying his best.
he was trying his best. He kind of
Yeah,
fucked up.
yeah, he made some bad decisions, and but
And he also has that synesthesia thing that tells him when things are good or bad. And so sometimes when his inside he's going, this is probably a bad idea, but the synesthesia is going, you need to do this in order for things to work out the way they need to. It kind of puts you in a weird place,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah,
Okay.
I did actually like that about it, but yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you said that because we do have a Wade centric book coming out, coming down the
Cool.
pipes. He's going to get his HEA too after we get rid of his nasty wife.
Good.
All right. Other. Sorry, Joanne. All right. How about bucket lists? Let's talk about travel. What you got planned?
Well, I've never left the country, so that so
But that is changing. That is
it's
changing in
changing
a big
big time
way.
here. So ever since I started writing, I wanted to and started like actually looking around what authors do. I wanted to go down and do Babe in Australia. I've ever since I
Mhm.
was a little tiny kid, I wanted to go check out Australia and New Zealand, and
Yep.
so I'm finally going to go down there and do Babe
Mhm.
and participate in that, and then I'm gonna do a little travel around New Zealand, and then I'm going to Rare in London after that. So
You're just a globetrotter, is what you are.
yeah, I'm gonna have to save all of my pennies though. But
I
um
would love to do that.
I
So
don't
yeah.
ever go on vacation. I don't even take days off. So it's it's
Mhm.
I needed like a break.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I want to
because
go to Babe because apparently Grace McGinty and I are now best friends.
oh well, that's
So
nice.
yeah, yeah. She actually taped a message for me today at a Rare in Edinburgh.
Oh
My PA put the phone up to her face and said, "Say hello to my author," and she did. So yeah, I definitely have to go to Babe and stalk her one of these years.
yeah. So
Okay, so we're getting we're getting down to the end of this, and I want to make sure we have a couple more questions here. I really wanted to make sure we asked. Okay, if you have to make up, I want you to make up a harem of four characters from your books. It can be from any of
oh,
them. Who are they? I
that's
sent you these
painful.
questions. You have no. You
I
have
know that was
no
the one I
response.
couldn't answer.
How did I do that? You're like, she hasn't asked me like 30 of these. I'm
Oh
clear.
gosh, I love them so much, all of them. Um, the hard part is like I whenever whoever I'm writing about at that moment is usually who I'm in love with,
Mhm.
so that's that's been great. Um, I do love a cinnamon roll, a protective growly cinnamon roll. So I would probably grab all of them
All the
for
cinnamon rolls. You'd have a big
to me.
batch of cinnamon rolls, a whole tray of them covered in
Trey,
glaze.
I would probably do that.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of having like uh Arden from Shadowcraft because he loves
Mhm.
to cook and he's such a protector, a healer. Um,
Mhm.
but he's
Arden was awesome.
he
Mhm.
was like but he was also protective and growly when he needed to be. And I probably take Flint as well.
Mhm.
My sugar roll, cinnamon roll, gargoyle. He's shy, but yeah, he eventually finds himself throughout the books.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
oh yeah,
One more.
I think Maxim would be great too, just because he's funny
It's funny. Yes, that's what we
yeah,
need. You needed that
snarky and
one.
he's
Yes,
always
snarky
kind of
guy.
got like he's always kind of saying something and winking at her, so I think, and I would
Mhm.
love as a character, I created it so that he's lived 800 years and
Mhm.
he's been a part of all these weird things. So he'll just
Right.
drop his hints that maybe he knows so and so,
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
and I
It is
love,
fun to have that.
yeah, and that like I would love to like to have him in my group just so I could ask him all the things that he saw in his 800 years. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that would be very cool.
that would
I
be
would
good.
love to have Grayson just ask him questions.
Yeah,
That's all I'd ever want out of Grayson. Just questions.
do anything else. I mean, it's not his great tale or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, nothing
No.
else.
Okay. All right. So the last thing I'm going to ask you with our remaining couple of minutes here, um, trying to think of the exact way to, do you think that, I want to ask you a question about indie publishing.
Mm, okay.
With and give you 4 minutes to answer, right? So you're going to enjoy this. Do you think that it has become more difficult to publish? Has it become a harder world for indie publishing since you started?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate it. That's very honest. And then I was going
Um,
to ask if you had any advice for people coming into publishing now, people who might be thinking about putting out a book.
I mean, okay, so I started I started writing in '09 and novels, but I started publishing in 17. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that back then, uh, we didn't have the resources. We didn't have, there wasn't, uh, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Amazon was just starting to get the KU thing going, there was a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there was not resources, people weren't pulled together. The indie author community wasn't developing. Well, it was just starting to develop.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but then when I started publishing with Eve, uh, back in what was that? What year are we in? um,
17 was where we
yeah,
started, I think. No, 19?
yeah. So I think 22 is when I started
Yeah.
publishing Text and Chained and all those others. So, but when I was doing that, Facebook was much easier to navigate. They didn't hide things
Okay.
as much. Groups, you were able to actually interact with your groups and they would actually show your posts to people. They weren't like, you know, going after people's comments. So there you were able to engage more on
Yeah.
we didn't have, I mean, TikTok was just starting to, start to make a thing, but so there was that. So if you were able to get a viral TikTok, like uh, the Zodiac
Hmm.
Academy stuff, or I think Britt Andrews was able to get a couple good
Yep, she was.
TikTok videos that launched her.
Hmm.
Um, so there was opportunities like that that came along, but now TikTok is harder to navigate.
Hmm.
There, Facebook suppresses things.
Hmm.
Can't just interact with people. Parties don't seem to work as much anymore. So I mean, I used to get 100 comments on in a party, and
Yep.
now
Hmm.
now I might get lucky if I get one or two. Um,
So that's a huge drop off, and it's a really big change. Yeah.
it's a really big change, and so
Hmm.
it's it's hard to, right? So you have to rely more on paid ads, um,
Hmm.
and other things. So it's
Yeah.
which not everybody has the money to pay into
No.
ads.
Yeah.
So because this is a very expensive proposition.
Hobby. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hobby. My hobby is real expensive. Yeah.
Really, because I mean, I make my own covers,
Yeah.
but not everybody can do that. So those are like hundreds of dollars, typically. And
Editors are hundreds and hundreds of
editors,
dollars. Yeah.
yeah, depending on how
And then
long your book.
ads and yeah.
Yeah, so it's there's a lot of expense into it, and to do it right, uh, to be, fully effective, to really get your stuff out there. I mean, I wish I would have known what known, when I first started, what I know now. I probably would have done better with my first series that I wrote,
Okay.
under the name, because
Hmm.
I would have been able to, promote those things and, do different things. But yeah, it's hard. There's just a lot of like hurdles, and we're worried about our stuff being, stolen and
Stolen. Yeah. Or
piracy.
KU, KU saying you can't sell it here anymore, or yeah, taking
Right.
all
Yeah,
your
or changing the
money for
rules.
2 months. Yeah,
Yeah, and if for whatever reason they find your book on a pirate site, they can decide to shut you down.
they can. Yep.
And I don't think a lot of people understand that, or they don't care, that do that. Um, but yeah, it's harder to typically to get a good, like, your footing, especially as a new author, I would say.
Okay.
Um,
So what would your one piece of advice be? Because we're just about done here. One piece of advice to people who are thinking about entering indie publishing.
make friends, make friends with
That's a
other authors.
really good piece of advice, actually, for a lot of
Um,
reasons.
yeah, I mean, make friends with, and not just like just to use them, but make friends. And well, I have to say that, don't I? No, no, I mean, make friends with the people that are like further down the road than you,
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I mean, don't go, you don't, I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't even, even though I've had some success, I wouldn't like just approach any author. But I would approach people, my peers, and that I know that are doing a little better than me and say, hey,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
hey,
Yeah,
what
you can't
do you do?
shoot your shot
Yeah.
too high.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want,
Yeah. No, I totally get it though. Yeah.
even if other authors feel nervous to approach other authors. I mean, I don't think most
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
readers think that, but we're all like fangirling too. So,
Hmm.
but I would, I really learned so much by becoming friends with other authors, interacting, saying, "Hey, did you hear about this? Or do you know about that? Or
Hmm. Yep.
suggest on this thing," and getting feedback and being a sounding board for them as well.
Hmm.
And I would also really truly invest in feedback on your covers and your blurbs,
Hmm.
because that is the most important thing. And then
Yeah,
also,
and that could, and it dovetails back into the authors, because who do we turn to for that stuff but the people that we've made friends with and have on Messenger? And I have a group of 3 or 4 people that I can always send a blurb to. I can always send
right,
a, yeah, could you guys read this real quick? And I know it'll get done. And same if they send it to me, I'm getting it done too. So
yeah,
that is a really good piece of advice. Thank you. Yeah. I don't know that there is another job I've had where I've had to spend so much time doing kind of social currency in
yeah,
order to be successful. Yeah.
yeah,
All right,
and
Miss Vale. I don't want to go too far over.
yes,
Um, but I have to say a giant thank you to you, not just for today, but you were honestly one of the very first authors who reached out to me and offered help when I was flailing with something, and patiently walked me through stuff and sent me little, hey, just so you know, you might want to do this. Very friendly little like cautionary statements occasionally as I started to wander off into the distance. And I really so appreciated it.
oh,
And I love your books. I love your humor. I love the way you think. They're just so much fun for me to read. Um, and I can't wait to see what you're coming up with next.
thank you. Yeah, and
Yeah.
thank you for having me here. And I love your stuff too. And I'm glad I was able to help you out a little bit. And I
Yeah.
do try to give back just as much as I was able to receive from others.
Right. You
And
gotta pay it forward. Yep.
forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All
Same.
right. All
Yeah.
right.
Thank you
Have
for
a
having me.
wonderful night. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.